Orcas have very large, complex brains. And when I first caught sight of an orca brain, which was in a jar on a shelf in a lab, I was really quite amazed. So the first question that came to me was, what does this whale do with that brain? Still the question I'm asking.
And that was 40 years ago, and you worked with some animals in captivity?
It was 1967. Behavioral research with an orca named Skana at the Vancouver Aquarium, and they wanted somebody to study the whale.
What did you learn from her?
Mostly, I think I learned that this was a very unsuitable place to keep a remarkable being.
That was around the time, actually, that Dr. Michael Bigg, who died in 1990 and was very much our mentor and the true pioneer whose vision led to photo identification, he started learning about the societies that these whales live in around our coast, and that these were incredibly complex animals with very elaborate social relationships.
You put the brain and the implications of that together with the social side, and you understand immediately that putting her in a concrete tank and completely shutting off the company of her kind was an enormously unfair and inappropriate thing to be doing.
Studying a pair of whales called Orky and Corky, they would begin conversations with certain sounds and end conversations with certain sounds. And I realized that studying communication between those two whales in captivity would be like studying communication between two people in a prison. That there was no way that I was going to actually learn what they were saying and the real context of their lives.
I'll tell you the main thing about Corky, and she's a survivor. She has been in captivity for 38 years, about 43 years old, which is incredibly old for a captive orca. Most of them die within 10 years. She still uses the calls of the A5 pod, and she is swimming round and round the tank, and in a concrete tank, the sounds that they make reverberate off the walls of the tank. They're constantly in an acoustic fuzz. I think it's an incredibly stressful environment simply because of that.
And how is your research here at Orca Lab different?
Well, when I was working in captivity and understood that if one wanted really to learn about them, you needed to go into the wild and study them there at a distance. And that's where we got into developing remote hydrophone systems that enable us to hear whales that we can't see.
Although SeaWorld claims to educate the public about marine mammals, it is the first to ignore the animal survival studies published by the International Whaling Commission, where data from scientists all over the world concur that the lives of whales and dolphins are dramatically shortened in a captive environment. And what about the quality of life for these animals? No matter how hard marine parks or aquariums try, they cannot duplicate in captivity the physical and mental requirements of these animals in the wild, especially for killer whales.
Their entire social system is disrupted in captivity, putting strangers together and separating them and moving them to another park. All of that disruption creates patterns that are completely abnormal.
I question the mental health of a lot of these captive marine mammals. After all, captivity changes them forever. Habitat dictates behavior. We never heard of an orca grabbing a person off the beach and pulling him underwater and drowning him like we have in captivity. This is bizarre. Many people have been hurt by these animals, and it's not their fault. It's what we're doing to them.
And given the attendance at all the SeaWorld parks combined is 9 or 10 million people a year, and that they're spending probably close to $50 a person, it would be ludicrous to think that SeaWorld Enterprises would give up this tremendous cash cow in order to appease people they consider to be crazies.
We're not a bunch of anarchists trying to close down these marine parks. Our strategy really is to revolutionize them. There are many marine mammals that have become victims to pollution and nets and so forth, and they become stranded. Well, We need to take them off the beach and take them to these places, rehabilitate them there, and let them go. That should be the show. That's the show. Not reducing them to performing circus clowns and selling this as education and research.
I think I've only just begun to scratch the surface with these guys. Pretty much every time I go out, I see something new or interesting, and I just wish I knew so much more about them. Just the real basics, like where do they go when I don't know where they are? What are they saying to each other? How do they teach the young ones how to catch things? And what happens to them when they're naughty? And just, yeah, fun stuff like that as well. And then on the science side of things, how are they impacted by pollution in the marine environment? What sort of things can we do to protect their habitat? If you teach people about these animals, they're going to understand them better, and if they understand them better, they're going to love them more, and if they love them more, then yeah, they're going to look after them, I hope.
For a long time it stumped me. People go, why do we need the whales? Why do we need the whales? And, you know, in truth, why do I need my earlobe? You know, why do I need any specific part of my body? Because it's part of the whole. And you can live without parts, but it's a degraded existence because it's all knitted together.
We're also learning as time goes by that, in fact, these animals aren't suited to captivity. So if we are a moral species and we morally evolve, we should perhaps draw the conclusion by now that what we thought would be all right 30 years ago, we know better now, and it's not all right. And we don't need to continue to remove animals from the wild and put them into captivity to be ambassadors for the next human generation.
Dolphins and whales are acoustical creatures, and their primary sense is sonar. When you capture an animal like Lolita and put her in this concrete box, you take away the two most important aspects of her life, her family and the world of sound. My biggest fear is that they're just going to keep Lolita there and keep doing these shows until the day she dies. They're just going to keep milking every dollar they can out of this animal, and that's really sad.
Once these animals are taken into captivity, it's a death sentence. They don't release them. They don't let them work. Well, okay, we're going to let you work for 15 years, then we're going to retire and you can leave. These animals go into these facilities and literally are worked to death. They're worked till they're dead, and then they go get another one. And they work that one till it's dead.
We're really interested in Lolita because she spent that real formative part of her life with her family. The first 6 years were out there. And, you know, so she had a lot of her education, all of her language skills, everything that her society could teach her, she already knew. It wasn't like she was pulled out of there as an infant and never allowed to develop. So she's remarkable. She's one that ought to. She's made the money for those guys. She's paid for her retirement too. She speaks her language. She's in her tank, but she doesn't have anybody to talk to. If she just dies in that place, it's just a gloomy thought, really. That we would, in this century, with all the enlightenment we have about freedoms and equalities and humanity toward other creatures, that we would allow that to continue. It's just absurd.
She's not living, she's simply surviving. There's a difference. Living is doing things. Living is chasing fish. It's cooperatively feeding. It's, moving around 100 miles throughout the day. That's what living is all about. She is simply surviving in this tank, and she's on death row. Lolita and other dolphins and whales are self-aware creatures. They routinely make choices and decisions regarding the details of their life. They are entitled to freedom of choice. Thus, Lolita is entitled to freedom. Capturing her and dragging her kicking and screaming into that concrete box is simply wrong. What a violation of nature, and what hypocrisy to say we're capturing these dolphins and bringing them to the Miami Seaquarium or SeaWorld or some other park so that we can teach you respect for nature.
This is especially exciting when one can feed them and even touch them. But is it proper to deny the dolphin freedom for this activity? The closeness and the direct contact with dolphins has certainly resulted in many people becoming interested in the problems of animals in nature. On the other hand, when we realize that these animals are often kept in these pools where they can't escape from people, this may also show a lack of respect for them.
This is a billion-dollar industry, and it's based on supply and demand, just like any other product. If we can educate the consumers and they become responsible, perhaps they won't buy a ticket. And that's the solution. Don't buy a ticket. That's the best peaceful, nonviolent way to beat this industry.
For me, this has been a fantastically moving experience. I've always wanted to learn more about killer whales. I've been a fan for years, and I didn't realize that there was so much to learn. Now, I've seen killer whales in captivity perform, and they put on a great show. But take my word for it, this is the best show on earth.